Yeah, it's okay. So let's hit the whole Brady thing. A lot of different viewpoints on it. I guess I'm wondering, is the Brady thing going to continue? I should have researched this properly, but
We're talking about opposing viewpoints. I have a different opinion on this than I think everyone else in sports media. I think the
okay,
Brady deal is a good deal. I think it's a good
okay,
deal.
I like it. I like it.
I think it's a good
Tell me
deal.
why.
I think it's a great deal. So the reason why everyone thinks it's a bad deal is because they're paying him so much money for worse performance in the booth than Greg Olsen, right? Like if you just think about those things, he's making more money than anyone else, but he's probably not as good. That's an opinion, but he's probably not as good, which seems to be the popular opinion. I don't necessarily have that opinion. I think he's fine. Look, I thought Greg Olsen was amazing. Actually, I really liked Greg Olsen in the booth.
Yeah.
So to live up to that is really difficult. He's probably not there, but I don't think he's terrible like some people think. The reason why I think it's a good deal though is because he's not being paid to be a broadcaster. That's not what they're paying him for, right? They're paying to be associated with Tom Brady. So he gets $37.5 million a year. I do think he's going to continue it because that's a lot of money. It's more money than he made playing professional football for 20 years. It's a hell of a lot of money, especially when he wants to take on all these other challenges with the Raiders and everything else. He has a lot of interest outside of sports. From an investment perspective, $37.5 million will help you there. So I do think he'll continue. But for Fox, I think it's a good deal because if you think about how much money they're spending on sports in general, right? We can talk about the cable business for hours. That business is obviously declining. So what do you have to do? You have to keep that business going for as long as you can because it's actually a really good business if it stayed in its current format. If you stop losing subscribers and people stop churning on cable. If you're Fox and you're investing billions of dollars every single year into sports rights across the NFL, but also a ton of other sports as well. And then you think about Brady and you're going to pay him $37.5 million, which is when you add everything up, less than 1% of what you're going to spend on everything else. But you're going to tell him you're not only going to be a broadcaster. You're going to star in commercials for IndyCar. You're going to show up for the Michigan-Ohio State game and do a guest appearance. You're going to hand out the championship trophy for the UFL. You're going to, show up for this secondary sports property and elevate it and make it a little bit more popular. And by the way, you're also going to go out to dinner and you're going to play golf with these media executives that are potentially going to advertise on our network as well. And you're going to convince them to go do that. All of a sudden it starts making a lot more sense, right? Like, I think some people have the expectation that Fox thought that, like, to me, the naive opinion is that Fox thought Brady was going to increase viewership for the NFL and they were going to be able to charge advertisers more money and that makes it worth it. No one is tuning into an NFL game because of Tom Brady, right? Like, broadcasters just don't move the needle. Yeah. Whether you're Greg Olsen, Tom Brady, Troy Aikman, whatever, it doesn't matter. You have to get him to go do other things. That's why you see him posting social media videos of the LFG award every week. You see him doing all these other things for Fox. So the way I explain it to people is that Tom Brady's an ambassador for Fox. He's not a broadcaster. And I think that makes it worth it. Whereas if you were just going to consider him as a broadcaster, that's a preposterous amount of money to pay a broadcaster.
I would agree with it. And I also enjoyed the experience of him being a broadcaster, not because of anything he said necessarily. And I agree with everybody that Greg Olsen is a better broadcaster. There's just something to the weight of that guy. I enjoyed, perhaps perversely, watching Patrick Mahomes melt down while Tom Brady was announcing the game. That's something I would not get from Greg Olsen. If Greg Olsen was announcing that game, I'm sure he would say trenchant things about it, and that would be helpful to the broadcast. But there was something to what a bizarre situation where Brady, at some level, he would never admit it, has to care about his status relative to Mahomes. And for now, the idea that Mahomes will be elevated above Tom Brady has been put on pause, at least for a few years, and he's announcing the game.
Oh,
and
he loved it. He loved it.
Oh, he had to. He felt giddy. It felt like giddiness was coming through the TV. That was just a delicious little snippet right there. And
he's also so much better in studio than he is on the broadcast. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen his stuff on Colin Cowherd's show. Like, when he sits down,
it's so good.
It's so good. He's amazing at it. When he just sits there and he's relaxed and he just talks about being a quarterback in the NFL and the challenges and all these other things, like, it's amazing. And I just don't really understand, like, sure, broadcasting is a different animal, but some of that should translate over, and maybe it will over time, and he'll get. I do think he got better from the beginning of the year to the end. Like the reps obviously helped, and by the Super Bowl, like he was more than a serviceable announcer. But it's just so difficult when you think about Greg Olsen, because there was only one person really in the world that could have taken Greg Olsen's job, and he decided that he wanted to be a broadcaster.
Yep, that's what happened. It wasn't Greg Olsen's fault. I think what's good about Tom Brady in a lot of these situations in studio, by the way, is his brutal honesty and harshness that almost cuts against his public image, that he will not mince words, which I also think is one of the advantages of Troy Aikman. He's so negative, Troy Aikman is, and that's what I love about him when he's just crushing a player on broadcast, because there's just not enough of that sometimes, especially from the perspective of the NBA world, where it feels as though, I don't know, the agents run everything, so you can't talk bad about any player or even any GM. And when I'm watching the Mavericks play on ESPN, they're telling you about how maybe the trade will work out, the Luka trade. And I'm going, okay.
That's a tough one to spin. Yeah, that's a tough one to spin. Well, now there's this theory that, and this is the topic for another day, but the theory that inside the NBA is somehow ruining the NBA because they're negative sometimes.
It's insane. It's so insane. It's just like this manifestation of LeBron James's insecurity that's been pushed into the ecosystem, which there's a layer of irony to it, or unacknowledged aspect of it as well, where LeBron is going, it's all negative. It's all negative. And I'm going, what about all your media proxies that are all over the media ecosystem talking about your greatness every day? You're the one who's overtly directing it to be positive, and you're telling me it's all negative. I feel gaslit, LeBron James. I gotta say, it's this irony where the more the players are getting coddled, the more they're saying it's never been worse. I thought Bill Simmons did a great job on his podcast detailing how harsh the coverage used to be of these players when things would go wrong. I actually thought Nick Wright had a good counter argument that the players would get crushed based on what happened in the postseason, but now there's more of a day-to-day referendum on who they are that makes them more insecure.
There is, but what's wrong with that? Everything else is so positive. I don't have any problem with that at all. Like, that's the world we live in today, where it goes from you take a full body of work to now it's every single thing that you do, but you can't always be positive about it, right? You have to be negative about it in some aspect, because in a lot of ways, that's the truth, right? Like if LeBron failing when he first got to Miami, if you were just positive about that, saying, oh, he had to adapt to a new team, like that would lose a huge chunk of his story, where he got there and they struggled and they lost the first time and they came back and won. Like that redemption arc makes sports so much better, versus if you were to take the other side of that and say, it's okay, he lost, he did his best. Like no one cares about that.
Yeah,